Hi, it's Jen from Shabby Fabrics with a really fun tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to make the Diamond Garden Quilt designed right here at Shabby Fabrics a couple years ago now. And when I saw Robin Pickens' Pansy's Posies, I knew it was the perfect time to reintroduce this pattern. Kits are available, and hey, even if you're a beginner, with the magic of using Krista Mosier's Creative Grid 60-degree diamond mini tool, which is what we'll be using to cut out all of our diamonds, this is nearly foolproof. I'm going to talk you through all of the ways that you can absolutely be successful and give you all of the tips and techniques that I know that helped ensure our success in making this beautiful quilt here. You can see we fell in love with this collection. We have the Maxwell bag. So roomy and spacious inside there with pockets. This is definitely a customer favorite. So again, we decided to apply the fabric. So whether you're wanting a quilt to display or maybe a bag to carry or both, we have both of those available as kits. Inside your kit, of course, you will be getting all the fabrics you need to be able to make the quilt top and the binding. Be sure to grab that backing. We can't get more of these fabrics or even more of this quilt. So if that speaks to you, be sure to pick up both the kit, the backing, and the 60-degree diamond, as you will see, is an essential element and required for the project. Once you have your layer cake, your 10-inch squares, give them a good press if perhaps during shipping or maybe where they were stored, they have any wrinkles. Go ahead and press them out now. Don't wash any of this fabric in advance. It's important that you use the layer cake unwashed as well as your background fabric as well. Don't use anything that's going to shrink this up. We're going to really be maximizing this square, as you're about to see, with very little waste. And I like that. Sometimes when I use a pre-cut or do a project, I have a lot of leftovers. They actually cause me a little bit of stress because I can't bear to throw them away, but I don't have another project in mind and they start to accumulate. So I love that we're really maximizing the fabric. This works fabulously with the spinning mat, not required the way the ruler is, but as you will see, it is another tool that will nearly guarantee your success with this project. So as we know, a layer cake are 10-inch squares, and I'm just going to grab one at a time. You could, if you're feeling very confident and you want to stack more than one at a time, as long as they're stacked exactly on top, you certainly could do some bulk cutting. But the goal will be to get 3. Let me show you where we're going here. Our goal is to take that square and get 1, 2, 3 out of that. Now, you won't have to do that with every single one of your layer cakes. There's a total of 90 of our darker purple and green diamonds in our quilt here. But if you are going to be pushing a lot of the lighter colored prints, such as this one here, maybe this on the back of the bag to the side, to bias your choices of your diamonds to be the purples and the green, you will be likely getting 3 from each of those, but you will have some left over. On your mat, and this is important, we emphasize this, you're going to want to find the center of that. You could certainly fold your fabric if you're uncomfortable with that, and you absolutely want to have that geographical location. However you want to find that, it's very important for this first cut that we are biasing our tool to be as straight up and down, and that's again where this is lovely. I've got a lot of alignment helping me right now, but that tool is absolutely on that very edge because I need it to create the space for this one here and this one here as we see in our pattern. So I'm going to be very careful about not overcutting into any other lane because I need those lanes. I might come just back here. Okay, I'm just going to push that to the side. I love the spinning mat because I don't have to lift up my fabric. I can just now concentrate on rotating around my fabric. So if it's in your budget to grab the spinning mat, I recommend it so much because there's so many times you're going to find that you're going to use this that you never even realize how often you start grabbing for it. once you have that resource in your sewing room. So there's one, and again, per our pattern, notice that's a common side now. We were very careful about that. So now we're going to push this as far into that corner as we need to, where I have that side is already cut. I have all the way around where I'm like, yes, I absolutely have that. And again, you can see the beauty of the spinning mat, not having to lift anything. Okay, that's two. And of course, up here, you can see now we're going to push that along our common side. I've got my space here. I'm running right along that. I am going to show, I just want to show you how much is kind of, there's not much waste. We really are maximizing what this layer cake is going to give us here. Okay, and now we've got our three. From the background fabric, our pattern will be guiding you into cutting some strips. Those will be, of course, the size that you are needing so that you can just place that ruler right along there and be able to cut them out just the same. So I've got some here. Now, it was really interesting when we got ready to sew things together. I'm going to show you the right way to do it. And Tammy had discovered when she was sewing this together the wrong way to do it. And it was a surprise to her. As we look at this is the right way and this is the wrong way, notice how these are not reversible. So key, this is very key, and I'll move on to the next page. When you get ready to lay out your squares and your arrangement and you get ready to sew everything together, and of course things are going to be sewn on diagonals, be sure to place your white background and your colored fabric this way, right? Because you can see hers were the other checks, and notice that says wrong. Don't do it this way. We're going to put that aside. We want this to be in this orientation, light here, dark here. The notching in Krista Mosier's ruler. If you've ever sewn with triangles and shapes that are kind of different, not just squares, alignment can be a big issue. Where do I line this thing up? But because of the engineering of this tool and the notching at the top, this isn't even a saw. It's like a puzzle. There is no other place for these pieces to be than right here where they just fit and they notch in so, so beautifully. That's why I'm saying here, this nearly guarantees your success. Now, very important that we're sewing with an accurate quarter inch seam allowance. Because I know that that is one of the areas that I continue to struggle in consistency, I have my seam guide on my machine and I do not recommend a scant quarter. Sew with your regular quarter inch seam allowance. If you too sometimes struggle with the consistency, just pick up these seam guides. They're fantastic. I love that they come on and off the machine. I have my diagonal seam tape just always on my machine now. I really love that to help me get lined up. But it also helps guide me by knowing that when I place my seam guide just where I can see that black line, I know I'm exactly where I need to be to get my quarter inch seam allowance. So we will go and sew that now. So when we press, pressing is an important part of this project. Some projects, pressing is a little bit, however you prefer. Not this time. Just remember that we will be pressing seams open at this point as we're assembling the various sections. a nice press. And you can see how that is just, it just transitions. It's incredible. I can't say enough about the engineering behind Krista's patterns. As you can see here, right, this is starting to show the alignment. As we would start to lay this thing out, we have a white in the corner. We have this row. We have the next rows. Let's talk about sewing some rows together. This is a key. We already know that when we sew these sections together, no problem. We have our notching and it helps us know where to be. This is notched down here. So when we line that, we know we're in the right position. But once these are sewn together, there is an alignment thing I want to point out to you that's not as intuitive. We do emphasize this in the pattern, and this is what I'm talking about. This is an example of some rows that were sewn together, and we want those points to hit. How do we align those rows? We know the notching worked great when we were sewing the smaller sections together, but when it comes to the rows, let's look at that. I've got one row here. You know what I'll do? I want to go sew a row together with you, and then we'll attach it. Let me just sew this together. I'm going to press that open. When I come back, we're going to align these rows, and I'm going to show you where you're looking. This is going to be a key to helping your points come out exactly where you want them to be. Let me go ahead and get this sewn together. I'll press the seam open. When we get back, we're going to align those rows and sew them together. And you can see using the strategy that I'll be showing you, that'll help you ensure that those points are coming together just like you'd want them to. Okay, so I have my two kind of strip sections put together. Now we want to sew the rows together. As you place them right side together, the question becomes, where do I be? And it's natural to think that if there's a seam here and there's a seam there, that must be the place. So let's pin that real quick, and I want to show you what that would produce. There's parts of quilting that I think are intuitive and parts that are not. This is one of those that is not. As I open this up, notice how my seams are absolutely not going to come out. We emphasize this in our pattern. I'm going to point it out in the pattern and then show it to you so that you understand for certain what needs to happen. Notice how on each of these seam allowances that I have pressed open, this is one of the reasons we're pressing open. The edge of that seam allowance, again, keeping in mind that we had a 1/4 inch seam allowance is very important. You're going to line up the edge of that seam allowance that's on the right with this point. So I want you to, that edge right there, and I might even do it right here, it's a little easier for you to see, that edge and this edge, or that point, need to line up. Let's pin that real quick. I'll show you over here. Easier to see. We've got the dark purple, that edge, and that point line up. This is how we will ensure. This is one of the challenges of working with things on a diagonal and things that are also, now you've got this beautiful diamond shape. We've got a lot of angles going on, and this is kind of a revisit of our geometry days, right? When we were all in school going, why are we having to learn this? Perhaps this is for that moment that we can put our quilts together because this is about geometry. But you don't have to worry about getting an A on that test or remembering how to do all the formulas. It's right here. Just keep reminding yourself that that right edge with your seam pressed open is going to line up with those points every time. If you do that, this is going to come out beautifully. Keeping in mind that we're going to make sure that we are being very honest about that 1/4 inch seam allowance that we're going to go sew. So I want to do this with you. I want you to see it. I'm going to press it open, and then we'll talk about how do we, once all of this is assembled, how do we trim this thing up? I want you to see this. Okay, pressing, here we go again. We are going to check our points, see how we did. If they're off, I've noticed I have a seam ripper on set with me. That is not just window decorations. I use my seam ripper on a regular basis. So hey, if you're off a little bit, there is absolutely no shame in seam ripping that. It happens. I use it probably, well, a couple times a week, I'll be honest with you. See how that alignment helped everything just come out so, so beautifully. And I think that, you know, whether we probably, how would this want to press? Probably pressing open again, probably an equal distribution again of our seams. But this is how, and I keep pressing, of course, this is how you're going to ensure that all of these beautiful points come together. Now, whenever you do something that has diamonds, remember, this was a full diamond at one point. These were all full diamonds. Where'd they go? Well, that's what we're trying to show you here is those diamonds were projecting off of the project, right? Off of the visual part of the project. So you have to trim them. We want to make sure that you are acutely aware that you're not just trimming at that point, but 1/4 of an inch away from that, because of course we're still sewing with our 1/4 inch seam allowance. So that is what we're trying to emphasize here, that if you are a beginner, if you're an experienced quilter, you already know this. But if this is the first time you've ever done a project that has diamonds extending off of the project and have to be trimmed, it's just a good reminder that this dashed line on our Creative Grid rulers is for that very instance. It's telling you that is where the needle will pass once you get ready to sew, once you get ready to trim this. So you would trim this. In fact, we can do that right now together. One other pointer that Tammy wanted me to mention to you is there's a lot going on up here. There's a lot of these raw edges. Using a stay stitch with maybe 1/8 of an inch to just stabilize this, maybe even shorten your stitch length, so that we're just going to add some stability to that. So as you take this out to be long arm quilted, we don't get any kind of movement, cattywampus, or stretching. Those stay stitches kind of around the perimeter of that help to stabilize that. So you can see that, you know, such a beautiful fabric collection with a great design, and Krista's tool makes this so fun and actually come together very quickly, faster than you might think. So be sure to pick up your kit, your backing. The tool is required, as I mentioned, any other notions you might need, and if you can't resist that adorable bag, be sure to pick up that kit as well. I will see you soon on another Shabby video.